And we're back at 44 minutes after. The Obama administration says no to emergency aid for one of the biggest remaining threats to the economy. That is the state of California. This is according to the Washington Post. Top state officials warned Washington of a fast-approaching fiscal meltdown caused by a budget shortfall. This is according again to the Post. Now, Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner and other senior White House officials decided the state could hold on a little bit longer and should get its budget in order rather than rely on a federal bailout. Again, according to that Post report. And Democrats who control the state's legislature said you cannot plug this $24 billion deficit without raising taxes. Well, that sets up a battle with Republicans that could leave the state short of cash next month. Well, among the plans being floated to raise money is to sell some of the state's biggest landmarks. So will this strategy work? Paul Habibi is a lecturer of real estate at UCLA's Anderson School of Management. He says the plan is highly problematic, and he joins us from Los Angeles with his perspective. Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Carol.
So you say highly problematic. How so?
Well, there's a 5-component plan here that the governor's proposed. The most notable of the plans is to sell in a fire sale manner 7 trophy assets of the state of California. Those would include the LA Coliseum, for example, San Quentin Federal Penitentiary, and a few other landmark assets. There's also a component of this plan which is a sale-leaseback of certain state-owned buildings. And then the third most notable of the 5 is a refinancing of several of these buildings. The most problematic thing, which is quite obvious to most people, is that we're in a little bit of a commercial real estate crisis, to put it mildly. I think we're probably looking at a haircut of 25 to 35% on most of these assets.
Right.
And in a fire sale auction to opportunistic investors, they would most likely pay no more than 60 to 65% of the value taken from the peak of these properties.
So, Paul, you don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, but it's a bad idea in this terrible real estate market.
It's a terrible real estate market. The timing is awful. It's a pawn shop strategy at best. Obviously, if it's a last-ditch effort and there's nowhere else to get the money, then it may be pursued. However, keep in mind, this is only going to plug roughly $2 to $3 billion of the $24 billion shortfall that the state of California is currently facing.
All right, so you do agree, though, then that what the governor said, he says that the state could generate about $3 billion from selling these landmark and office buildings. So you do think he would get that price?
Well, that's an at-best measure. Keep in mind there's been no formal appraisals on any of these properties. What they have defined is an order of magnitude estimate of the market value. So basically what that means is they're not off by a zero.
Right.
But we know that, the prices that have been proposed aren't necessarily, they haven't been tested and tried and true. So certainly it could be that those are erroneously stated.
Paul, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit because, as the governor's team has kind of pointed out, that many of these aren't ordinary properties. They're unique. They sit on prime land, and that buyers have already inquired about some of these properties. So there is, it seems to be, some interest already out there. So might they get their price and actually, provide some badly needed revenue?
Well, Carol, that's a great point. These are trophy assets. People have a great propensity to want to pay up for these, but there's 2 big things that you need to keep in mind. Number 1 is that the financing market is shot, so you're going to have to put in a lot of equity to buy these. And number 2, the end user of these properties, take San Quentin, for example. If they want to build condos or a retail center, they're going to have to find end users who are going to buy and lease this space, and that market is dried up right now. So frankly, a lot of companies who would look at these properties are going to have to land bank them, and they're not looking at exits for several years. The financing is going to be lousy. A lot of equity is going to be sitting placed into these properties, and therefore, when you have that, the translation is they're going to ultimately pay less than these would otherwise be worth.
Let's go back to that other policy, though, also about the leasing back of properties, the sale-leaseback of some of the more mundane properties. That you think doesn't make sense as well?
Well, that's a short-term solution. It's kind of like the equivalent of me selling my car, taking some cash and solving my short-term problem, but then being stuck in a long-term lease situation. And those leases are very real budget line items that the state's going to have to face going forward. So all you're doing is deferring the problem. You're not really solving it.
But it would be maybe a short-term help, and that's what they kind of need right now, don't you think? I mean, eventually the economy will get back on track, so maybe those longer-term problems won't be there. I mean, if they can do a short-term fix, wouldn't that be crucial here?
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's more of the same. I mean, political stopgaps are often serving a short-term solution in favor of the long-term benefit. But unfortunately, there are not a lot of options here, so I'm not sure what to suggest beyond that.
Clock definitely ticking on this one. All right, Paul, thank you so much. Paul Habibi, everybody, of UCLA's Anderson School of Management.